continue. So again, on the number line, we had highlighted that 3/5 is a proper fraction and so on. Now, we're going to look at the number line. So we have a number line ranging from 0 to 1. If you want to classify it as start to finish or start to end, and we don't necessarily have to actually use 0, but in this, or 0 or 1, but in this scenario, we'll be using that 0 and 1. Now, looking at this number line, we would like to determine where on the number line would I write 3/5. So you'll see some letters on the screen right now. But before I actually start doing that, could you tell me why I have, or could you tell me anything else as to why I would have so many lines or strokes or segments, if you want to call them that, on this number line? What was the reason? Can anybody give me a reason as to why I have so many strokes on this number line as it pertains to 3/5? You can open your mics or you can type in the chat. Why would I use so many strokes on this number line?
Student to respond.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, yeah, okay. All right. Millicent Stewart said the fraction is divided into 5 parts. And how did we? Oh, and how do we? Could you repeat that one?
There's 5 strokes because you're counting in fifths.
All right, you're counting in fifths. So what in the fraction, whether it be the numerator or denominator, what in the fraction would give that away? What in the fraction would tell you that? The numerator or denominator?
Denominator.
All right, the denominator. And remember, as we said earlier, that the denominator is really going to classify how many equal parts you're going to divide this whole into. So we have 5 equal parts. And I'm going to actually count it. I'm going to jump a bit, starting from 0. So if you want to call them intervals or loops, etc., it means the same thing. So I'm going to jump starting from 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 1. So I get 5. So I have 5 equal intervals from 0 all the way until I reach 1. All right. Is everyone on the same page? Do I need to go over anything? You can say yes in the chat, as in everybody's on the same page, or you can open your mics. So again, the reason why we got 5 intervals or 5 equal parts that the line is divided into is because of the denominator has 3/5. In other words, the denominator has 5 in it. So that's why we divided equally 5 intervals. Okay. All right. Now, let me clear this screen. Where is that thing? All right. Now for the letters. Now, as I said before, we're going to have some letters on the screen, waiting for them to come up. So I'm going to have A, B, C, and D. So A, B, C, D. So which one of these letters would you say, or where would I put 3/5 on the number line? Which one of these letters, sorry. Which one of these letters would I assume that 3/5 is? Or where on the number line would 3/5 lie? Repeat that one. C. All right. Anybody else? All right. That's C. Anybody else?
Yeah.
All right. C. C. All right. Fair enough.
C.
All right. Good. All right. Oh, Miss Davidson, you can unmute your mic. I gave you permission to unmute. Miss Davidson? Oh, okay. All right. So we can say it's gonna be C. So this would be our 3/5. Now we're gonna look at 3 other variations or fractions that we'll be placing on the number line. So let's move on to the other one. Now 5/6. Now, how many intervals would I have now on that number line? And what would I use to determine how many intervals or loops that I will be having on the number line? So I'm gonna have the number line up. So how many intervals and what would indicate how many intervals you would have? Is it the numerator or the denominator's value? Which one is it? So you can type in the chat. So far in the chat, Mrs. Jones says the denominator 6, all right. Anybody else would like to comment?
Clark's Stuart's class also says 6.
All right. And why, how did they get to that 6?
And they said the denominator as well.
All right, good. So let's see if that's actually factual. So let me just plug in this charger. All right. All right. So let's see if I actually have 6 intervals or 6 equally spaced loops from 0 to 1. So let's count 0, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and finally 6. So yes, indeed, I have 6 intervals, and yes, that is based on my denominator's value. Now again, same scenario. So I'm gonna have letters ranging from A to E. And you're gonna tell me, or you're gonna say, you can type in the chat or you can open your mics and tell me, which one of these letters would you assume to be 5, 6, based on this number line that I have on the screen right now? Could you repeat that one? C? Oh yeah, you're still saying C. All right, you said C. Anybody else? Let me check in the chat. So in the chat, someone said E, Mrs. Jones. All right. Marlene Francis, 6 intervals earlier. That's fair enough. Anybody else would like to have an input? Which one of these letters would represent 5, 6? Is it A, B, C, D, or E? All right, E. Oh, you said E, not C. All right. All right.
Yeah, none of them are saying E.
All right, let's see. All right, that's fair enough. All right, let's see the other 2. Now, 1/5. Again, we're doing the number line thing. So I'm gonna have the number line. So again, how many intervals would I have? And we want to use the term equal intervals or equal parts. How many equal parts would I have? All right. How many? 5, 6. How many? 5, 6, 1. How many? 5. All right, good. And what tells you that again? What tells you how many intervals you should have from 0 to 1? You're breaking up. All right, cool. You're singing like a chorus. All right. Denominator. So we have 5 equally spaced intervals. Now again, we have the letters A, B, C, and D. Which one of these letters would indicate 1/5? Which one of these letters would we classify to be 1/5? A. Any more responses? All right, a majority of us are saying A. Not seeing anything in the chat so far. A, all right. All right, A, Mrs. Jones. All right. All right, so let's see. So it's indeed A, even though it's not shifted to above A, but it's 1/5, right? All right, fair enough. All right, the last one for the number line right now. So we have 1/3. Now, how many equal parts or how many equal intervals would I have on this number line? Well, I just gave it away. How many equal parts would I have? 3. All right, 3.
Not here, you know. 3.
I heard them, man. That's fine. So now we have the letters B and C. Where would or where should 1/3 be on this number line? Is it at B? Is it at C? Which one is it? B, C, which one? All right, B. Everybody's singing on B. All right. Anyone else would like to say something via the chat or the microphone? No? All right. All right. Thanks, Mrs. Clark Stewart. So it is indeed B. So using a number line, we can actually tell this is a type of popular question that they might, or we tend to ask a lot, right? We want to find out where on the number line would we find some of these fractions. So these are some of the common fractions that we use every now and then, but you can use different fractions and then you can divide those into different intervals or partitions, if you want to call them that, in order to get to the fraction, or where would the fraction be, right? Now, all of those were actually individual fractions, but what if we actually had more than one fraction to work with, right? So yes, Miss Marlene Francis, it's B, fair enough. Now, we have a race. Well, not necessarily a race, but we want to find out who is winning. So we have a somewhat a popular game that persons normally play. And no, I don't want the answers right now. We're just looking at this scenario because we'll be looking at it or the solution of this scenario in the other sections of this presentation. So again, we're trying to find out who is winning. So we have 3 friends, Mary, Miguel, and Harry, and they're playing red light, green light. So you want to find out who is winning. So we're just putting this scenario out right now until later down in the presentation, you'll find out how we can actually represent this or see who is winning. So the fractions are telling you how much of a distance. It's telling you how much of a distance that they have already moved. So Mary would have moved 3/4 of a distance, Miguel 4/8 of a distance, Harry 4/5 of a distance. But they really want to find out how can they place these friends on a line or even a number line to show where they are between the beginning and the end, or the start and the finish, right? So we'll be looking at this question soon enough, but for now, we're gonna move on. So we're gonna move on to comparing fractions. So one of the things that we want to, or that we have been using to some extent, is that we have a guide when you're comparing the fractions. We tend to look at the denominator when you're comparing fractions. And this is just one of the strategies that we can use to compare fractions. There are numerous amounts of strategies, but again, we're gonna use this denominator as our guide and also our benchmarking fraction. And can anybody remind me of the benchmark fraction that we have been using so far in this session? You can type in the chat or you can open your mics. Which one? All right, 1/2. So we're gonna use 1/2 as our benchmark. So how do we generally identify half of any whole? What can I use to say, okay, I gave this boy half, I gave this girl half of a pizza? How would I generally know how to identify half of any whole? Anything, right? As long as it's a whole, right? Well, technically speaking, right now. So how would I identify half? what would I tell? What would I say to you right now? What should you say to me? You can type in the chat or you can open your mics and speak. All right, let me see. All right, 2. All right, why did you say 2 though? Why did you say 2? Mrs. Clark Stewart. Why did you say 2? Or why did the class say 2? Again, how do you identify half of any whole? All right, Mrs. Francis. 2 equal parts. Golden Spring, equal parts of a whole, but how many though? All right, the denominator. So what is the denominator again, Mrs. Clark Stewart? You said it earlier, but it's 2. All right, because it has 2 parts. And we want to emphasize the notion of saying 2 equal parts, right? So we look at the denominator and we find out that it's 2 equal parts. All right, fair enough. All right, let's see. Now, our next thing that we must be accustomed to or know is that the numerator, must be half the value of its denominator. So these are some conditions, if you want to call it that, or steps that you can use to compare fractions. So one thing, we're using the denominator as our guide. The next thing is that the numerator must be half the value of its denominator. So for example, what is a half of 100? You can type in the chat or you can open your microphones. What is a half of 100? 50. All right, cool. So I use a big number right there, but we have smaller numbers on the screen shortly. All right, so 50. So this boy would get 50, this girl would get 50. Whether it's $50, I did not signify, but we can share it equally with 2 persons, only 2 persons, right? Since we're sharing it as a half of any whole. So let's look at this example. So we have this fraction on the screen right now. Can anybody tell me what's the fraction name? What is this fraction called in, let's say, words? Not just necessarily what we see right now, but in words. 5 what? 5 tenths? Oh, you're still answering the other question, Mrs. Francis. The class is still answering the other question. So this question is what the fraction that I'm seeing right now. What is the fraction name? All right. Elliston and Mrs. Jones had said 5 tenths. Anyone else would like to comment on the fraction that we're seeing on the screen right now? All right, 5 tenths, and that's in bold. All right, I guess they're saying it and shouting it, so. All right, let's move on. So if we look at the numerator and the denominator, we highlight the denominator because this is our guide in comparing the fractions. So the denominator is going to be 10, as you see right here. Then we look at the numerator. Again, one of the conditions is that the numerator is or must be half of its denominator. So we say, what's half of 10? When I share 10 boxes, well, $10 equally, how much would each person get? So when I share $10, or I find half of 10, what is half of 10? What is half of 10? A half of 10, okay, 5. And obviously we can see the 5 is in the numerator. So the numerator is half of the denominator, right? So that's the first thing that we're gonna look at, or the first thing that we want you all to see right now. That we are gonna use the same guide, and then we're gonna compare it to a benchmark or using as a benchmark, okay? So that's the first thing. Now, let's say I have a next fraction. So the question is, without answering it right now, you're not answering the question yet, we're gonna go through it. So, is this fraction greater than or less than a half. Now we're gonna use our guide that we have on the screen right now, the bullets at the front, at the top. We're gonna use that as our guide. So we're gonna look at the denominator first. The denominator is going to be 10. And what is half of 10 again? Can anybody tell me what is half of 10? Half of 10, how much is that? All right, 5. And yes, 5. So when I look at the numerator, what do I see at the numerator? Can anybody tell me what the digit is at the numerator? In this question right now? Well, in this example. What do I see, or what am I seeing as my numerator? What is, oh, I can't, oh, okay, 3. Anyone else is seeing 3? Everybody seeing 3 for my numerator? All right. You can open your mic and speak as well. Oh, I heard 3. Yeah, I heard 3. All right. So now the numerator is less than half of the denominator. So now using that notion, or using that, can I say that the fraction of 3/10, is it greater than or is it less than a half? What could I say about that? So is 3/10 greater than a half or is it less than a half? Less than a half. All right. So it's going to be less than a half, right? And the reason why it's less than a half is because the numerator is 3 and half of the denominator is 5. So 5 is greater than 3. Or in other words, 3 is less than 5. So this is why this fraction is going to be less than a half. And you can't just say less than, by the way, because the question says it's either it's greater than a half or it's less than a half. So good Elliston Primary for stating that it's less than a half. You can't just say less than, okay? Is everybody on the same page? Anything I need to go over? Am I moving too fast? Tell me. You can type in the chat. If everything is okay, just say yes, give me a thumbs up, etc. Or raise hand. Well, not raise hand, but yeah. Any questions? Any takers? No? All right. Let's see. All right, another fraction. Let's look at another fraction, and we're going to use those conditions again. Now, without giving me the answer right now, is this fraction greater than or less than a half? How do we know? So this is how we're going to find out if it's actually greater than or less than a half. We look at the denominator and numerator again. So the denominator is 10, and half of 10 is 5. So looking at the numerator, is 5 greater than 6 or is 6 greater than a half? Is 5 greater than 6 or is 5 less than 6? Which one is it? You're still breaking up. Okay. Mrs. Jones' class had said greater than a half. All right. Anybody else would like to come in?
And if you're not sure, you drive that. That's okay.
All right. So there's, I've never got what they said. Anyone else with anything to comment on this example? 6/10, is it greater than or is it less than a half? Repeat that one. It's greater than a half, but how do you know that? What do you use to tell us that it's greater than a half? How do you know that it's greater than a half?
6 is greater than 5.
All right, how did we get the 5 again? What we got, how did you get the 5? How did you get the 5?
5 is a half of 10.
All right, good. And the 10 was a what? Or a numerator or a denominator?
Denominator.
All right, fantastic. So this is how we use those steps in order to guide us in comparing fractions. So this is just one fraction, but we'll get multiple fractions and see which way is best, or how we can adapt using our benchmark fraction. So again, our benchmark fraction that we're using right now is a half. Now for this one, example 1, using a benchmark fraction, you want to replace that rectangular box with a less than or a greater than sign in order to make this sentence true. Now, I want you to tell me what your answer is in the chat, only in the chat right now, because I want to see the sign and also another way I could actually, in words, in an essence. So besides writing the greater than sign, you say greater than sign, write it in words, less than sign, you write it in words. So let's see what's gonna happen in the chat. All right, you're saying it's equal, Mrs. Clark Stewart's class, you're saying it's equal? How do you know that's equal? Why are you saying that is equal? How can we tell if these are equal? You're saying a quarter is equal to 3/4. Which one is it? Well, yeah. So again, in the chat, you're gonna write, remember that we're only using 2 symbols. So it's either greater than or less than. So which one is it? Less than, all right. Oh, mistake. All right, fair enough. All right. Anyone else would like to comment? It's greater than. So I should put that greater than sign right there. All right. Mrs. Francis, 1/4 is less than 3/4. All right. Jews Avenue, I see the sign that you're using. What sign is that? Jews Avenue Primary. Can you tell me in words what that sign is? All right, less than. Mrs. Jones corrected herself. Well, they corrected themselves. Jews Avenue. Greater than. All right, let's see. All right, I'm getting a mix, a variation of answers. So let's see. Now, if we have, this is just a representation of a quarter and 3/4. Now, the fraction on the representation on the left side right here. Let me get my pen up. Sorry. All right. So which one do you think has more?
Yeah.
Is it this one that has the 1/4 or the one that has the 3/4? Which one looks like it has more? Which one has more, the quarter or the 3/4?
I set it up before it. 2 beats.
I can't hear you.
The device is connected successfully.
Okay.
3/4.
All right, 3/4 is greater. But should I now put the greater than sign right here? Should I say is 1/4 greater than 3/4? Is that what you say? Yes or no?
Yeah.
No. So, Jews Avenue, I think they had said that there should be a greater than sign. But remember, you're reading from left to right in this scenario, and you can read from right to left, but you have to change the signs. Now, this is saying a quarter is greater than 3/4. And based on this representation, a quarter, is not greater than 3/4, right? So you have to be very careful as it pertains to the sign or the symbol that you're going to put in this rectangular box. So again, yes, 3/4 is bigger, but I can't just put a greater than sign right there. Now, what if I changed it and put, oh, sorry for the bad handwriting. Let me put 3/4 first, and I put a quarter right here. Sorry for the bad handwriting. Now, what sign would I put in this rectangular box? Would it be a less or a greater than sign?
Comparing a quarter and 3/4. Remember, we had that 6 here.
So this one, miss this one. So we have 3/4. We put something right here and we have a quarter right here. Now I'm asking, what sign would I put right here? Let me erase the earlier one. What sign would I now put in this one that I drew on the screen? Which sign? This one over here in red, in full red, greater than. And can you show me the greater than symbol in the chat, please?
You'd use the greater than sign.
All right, good. But now I want you to place it in the chat. I want you to type it out now. Saying it is completely different from the symbol, right? Because we might confuse the symbols every now and then. All right, Mrs. Jones' class said this is how I should write it. Now, is this way correct? Should I write it like this? Should I write the symbol as how it is? Is this a greater than symbol? Yes or no? Yes, no. It's that simple. All right. Now, I can say this in words by saying 3/4 is greater than a quarter, which is true, right? So that's how we read it from left to right. 3/4 is greater than a quarter. Now, for this one over here that I'm trying to circle, now this one would read a quarter is less than 3/4. So you see the difference? Once you see the greater fraction on the left side, you normally put the greater than sign, right? In most scenarios. Everyone understands that? Do I need to go over this one?
Could you say that again, please, sir?
Oh, so I was saying that the one that I circled, the quarter, this is how we read it in words. So we have a quarter is less than, this is the less than sign over here, than 3/4, right? And the one in the right side, over the right side, that is in all red letters, well, red digits, it means that 3/4 is greater than a quarter, right? So that's all we were trying to establish. Now, that's the sign that I'm using, which is the less than sign, right? And the representation that we use had fourths, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And why did I get a 4? Because the whole is divided into 4 equal parts based on my denominator. So the denominator is quite important. Likewise, the numerator. So let's continue. Now, we're going to use our benchmark fraction. So earlier, we were using the denominator as a guide, and you were saying that the numerator must be half of its value, half of the denominator's value. Now, let's look at 6. Now, the denominator, what is the denominator? Is it 5 or is it 6? The denominator of this fraction, is it 5 or is it 6? Which one do you think? Can I hear you? You're breaking up a bit. You can type in the chat.
Go ahead.
Oh. The denominator is? Still can't hear it. It sounds a bit muffled. Elliston Primary, yes, 6. No, 6, good. Now, we're going to look at the numerator and denominator again. So the denominator is 6, and half of 6 is how much? What is half of 6? How many groups of 2 do I have in the digit 6? Okay, Elliston Primary saying 3. Can anybody confirm that decision? All right, Mrs. Jones' class said 3. So looking at the numerator again, we realize that the numerator is 5. So we say to ourselves, is 3 greater than 5 or is 3 less than 5? Which one is it? Is 3 greater than 5? Or is it less than? Is 5, sorry, my bad. Is 5 greater than 3? Or is, okay, you're less than? You're saying that it's less than? All right, greater than. So sorry about the rephrasing. I had said something wrong earlier, so that's why.
Greater than.
So the 5 is greater than 3. So what that means is that the fraction of 5/6 is going to be greater than a half, right? So in other words, all we're trying to say is that the numerator is greater than half of the denominator. Now let's look at 3/6. Now the same thing applies. So we have 3/6. We identify the denominator to be 6. And the numerator, what can I say about the numerator in 3/6? What can I say about the numerator in... Repeat that one. Oh, I still can't hear. It sounds a bit muffled. What can I say about the numerator in 3/6? All right, it's half of the denominator, right? So half of 6 is going to be 3. That means the entire fraction of 3/6 is basically a half, right? So now out of 5/6 and 3/6, what sign should I put in between them right now? Should I put the less than sign? I only have 2 options, the less than and the greater than. So which sign do you think I should write in that little box right there? All right, greater than. So I want you to write the symbol or the sign, not the words right now. Let me see the symbols. Let's see the symbols for greater than. All right, fair enough, Mrs. Jones' class. Anybody else would like to make a comment? Oh, okay. So we say that 5/6 is greater than 3/6, and this is a greater than sign. Now, what if I had this? Let me change it a bit. What if I had 3/6? Sorry for the bad handwriting. Oh my gosh, I need to change it. All right, this is 3/6. All right, I have the box. And I have 5/6. Now, what symbol or sign would I put right here in this box? So I have 3/6, I have the box, and I have 5/6. What symbol would I put? No.
Less
All right.
than.
Less than, right? So how would we read? I want someone to open their mics and read as how you would say it, right? So I'm going to read the first one and let's see what you do with the second one in red. So the first one is saying that 5/6 is greater than 3/6. All right, so this is the first one, the original question. 5/6 is greater than 3/6. Now for the one in red, can anyone open their mics and tell me how would I say it?
Listen.
Yeah, all right, continue, go ahead.
6 is less than 5/6.
All right, even though you never said it harmonized, but it was right. And you both said it the same way, right? So 3/6 is indeed less than 5/6. All right? And remember that we're using our benchmark fraction of a half, and we're using our guide as the denominator mostly, and then we look at the numerator. So I'm going to erase this and continue. Oh, let me take off the pen. All right, the next one. All right, we said that. Now this one, what about that? I don't want the answers right now. We're breaking it down in simpler steps using our strategy of using the denominator and then half in the denominator to see what the numerator is like, comparing it to the numerator. So the first fraction I'm gonna have is 3/8. Now, what is the denominator again? What is the value of the denominator? You can type in the chat, or you can say it if you want. 8. So in this fraction, the denominator is 8. Now, remember, we're going to find half of what? Half of the numerator, half of the denominator. Which one am I using? Half of the denominator or half of the numerator? Which one am I using? Repeat that one.
Half of the denominator.
All right, good. Now you, yes, you. Tell me what's half of the denominator?
4.
4. Now, we're going to look at the numerator now. So we got 4. So we look at the 3. And we say, is 3 less than 4? Or is 3 greater than 4? Which one is it?
3 is less than 4.
All right, so 3 is less than 4. So this means that my numerator is less than half of the denominator. And this also means that 3/8 is less than a half, right? So notice the words or the language that I'm using. So I said the numerator is less than half of the denominator. Half of the denominator is 4. And 3, which is the numerator, is less than 4. So what this means is that the entire fraction of 3/8 is less than a half, right? So that is what that one means. Now, let's look at the other fraction, 3/6. What is my numerator? What is my numerator for 3/6? What is my numerator for this new
3.
fraction? 3.
3.
So, using that same guide that we just mentioned earlier, would that 3 be half of the denominator? Would that numerator of 3 be half of the denominator? Yes
sir.
or no? Yes.
Sir.
So with that being said, that means the numerator is half of the denominator. It's exactly half, right? Now, again, in other words, what that means to us is that the entire fraction of 3/6 is half, is equal to a half, right? Because if we did, well, when you do equivalent fractions, or if you did it before somewhere out of, I don't know, anywhere, you might have seen that 3/6 and a half are what we call equivalent fractions. But I don't need to get into that right now. When you get to that bridge, you'll cross it with your teachers and so on. So 3/6, the entire fraction, is literally a half. Now, so what sign would I put between the 3/8 and the 3/6? What sign would I put between the 3/8 and the 3/6? What sign would I put?
Don't get quiet on us. Let's see it in the chat or raise your hand and open your mic so we can. I see Queen's Prep's mic open. I want to answer that one, Queen's Prep. What sign would we put in the rectangle?
Mrs. Jones' class had said they're putting that sign. But what does that sign mean again, Mrs. Jones' class? All right, less than. All right, fair enough. All right, so that's the less than sign that we're gonna put. Now, Mrs. Wilmot's class, is that the greater than sign or is it the less than sign? Could you type that in words for me, please?
Less than sign.
Oh, that's the less than sign. You sure, Miss Wilmot's class? You sure? That's the less than sign?
It's a mistake, sir.
Oh, it's a mistake. It was a mistake. All right, fair enough. Now, I want you to read. Can anyone read out this fraction for me with the answer as how you see it? How would you represent this? How would you say this to me right now? How would you say this to someone beside you? How do you say it? We're reading from left to right. Now let's see what you'll come up with. You can go ahead and speak.
3/8 is less than 3/6.
All right. All right. 3/8 is less than 3/6. Now, what if I did the other way around? What's the other way? Can you tell me what is the other way I would write it?
3/6 is greater than 3/8.
All right, fantastic. So that's the other way I would have done it, right? Well, we would have done it. We, everyone, right? So good. All right, now we're back to the scenario that we had earlier with the red light, green light scenario. So now we're gonna see who is going to win or who is actually the right. So again, we have three friends, Mary, Miguel, and Harry. Those are the fractions of distances that they ran from the start to the beginning. So basically what we want is to find out who is first, who is second, who is third, etc. Right? So that's what we want to find out right now. Oh, Mrs. Francis, you had your hand raised. Was that an old hand or is it a new hand? You can open your mic. Oh, it's an old hand. Okay, I'll get it down for you. Yeah. Oh, I can't lower hands. Okay. Oh, it's already lowered. All right, cool. Now we're gonna use a number line to represent all of these persons' distances on the same number line because we want to find out who is further than who. Who would get the gold, who would get the silver, who would get the bronze, right? So let's see. Now I'm gonna write on the corner what each of the persons.
The names and the fractions, right?
Yeah. Oh, I really can't write on this. Mary. Oh my gosh. So Mary was how much again?
Mary, 3/4, yes.
3/4. Oh, I write so bad on this. So 3/4. Oh my gosh, I write so bad. All
Miguel
right.
was 4/8.
Miguel. I'm gonna put M for Miguel. Well, MIG.
MG or MI.
MIG. What was that fraction again?
4/8.
4/8. And Harry was how much? 4/5. I'm gonna put H for Harry. 4/5. All right. Now let's see. Let me get this off, this pen off. Now, what I'm gonna do right now, what's gonna happen on the screen is that I'm gonna have some intervals.
Just before you do the interval, sir, 1 second. If we were to use our benchmark fraction, which of these, are any of these less than a half or greater than a half, quickly? Is Mary past the half mark? Is Miguel past the half mark? Is Harry past the half mark? Say if there's anyone at or past or before before or after the pass mark. Quickly. Let's see if we're using our benchmark fraction of a half, applying and using it in this example. Don't go quiet. Is Mary more than a half or less than a half?
It's more than a half.
Okay, what about Miguel?
Less than half.
Miguel is at a half, okay. Because, why did you say it's at a half again?
4 is a half of 8.
Great, what about Harry?
More than.
Just wanted to see if they were using the benchmark fraction and they seem to be doing well, sir. Please go on, sir.
All right, thanks for that. All right, now I'm gonna use some intervals, or some intervals are gonna come up on the screen, and you're gonna say to us, or say to me now, which one of these persons would I be looking at without actually knowing where it is? So I have this one, even though it's said and done, but yeah, I have this one. which one of the persons, or how many intervals do you see on the screen right now? From 0 until you're at 1. How many intervals are you seeing? How many intervals are you seeing? From 0 all the way to 1. How much? How much? Can't hear you.
See
Can't hear
a
you.
4 in the chat, sir. I'm seeing a 5 as well.
Okay. So we're seeing 4 and 5. All right, let's
Yes,
count it.
sir.
Let's see. Let me get this off first and then let's count. All right, so I jumped 4 times from 0 all the way to 1. Now, which one of these fractions or which one of these persons would indicate that I jumped 4 times? Which one of those persons? Which one of those persons would I use? Would I use this 3/4? Would I use a 4/8? Would I use a 4/5? Which one of these persons would indicate that you have an interval of 4? And what are we using to get to that interval? Which one of those persons do we have 4 intervals for? All right, someone is saying Harry. But how do you determine if it's Harry? We use 4 intervals. So the 4 intervals, is it that I'm going to look at my numerator or is it that I'm going to look at my denominator? Which do you think?
Denominator.
Denominator. So which one of these fractions has a denominator of 4? Or which one of these persons? Which one of these persons?
Mary.
Mary. So you can see that the denominator of Mary is going to be 4. So this right here in the third jump, when I reach the third jump, that is going to be Mary's distance in the race. So, well, in the race at that moment in time, right? Now, I'm going to do a next one, and you're going to tell me the same. I'm going to ask the same question, really. So the next one, let me get this up. So we finished with Mary. So that's Mary, as you see at the top. Let's see this one. Now, look at it now. You have Miguel and you have Harry left back. Now, why would you say if it's Miguel or why would you say it's Harry? What are we using to determine which of these persons' distance we are representing on the number line right now, and why? Well, how? Not necessarily why, but how? Which one is it? So I have this new interval that you're seeing on the screen, and I want to find out who am I referring to? Is it Miguel or is it Harry? Which one is it? You can open your chat or you can, oh. who said-
Miguel.
Miguel, how did you know that it's Miguel?
What?
How do you know that it's Miguel? The
Because
interval.
we have 8 intervals.
All right, let's count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do I stop right here? Do I stop right here? Yes or no? All right, continue. We stop at the 1, so we go from 0 to 1, and we counted 8. And you said that it's Miguel. And what did you determine to know that it's Miguel and not Harry? Besides the 8 interval, what did you use? How can we, did you use the numerator or denominator after you had said the 8 intervals or 8 loops? Which one are the numerator or the
Denominator. The
right,
denominator.
denominator? So that's how you got to that answer, right? Now, obviously, well, not obviously, but let's put the 4/8 on this fraction bar right now. Let me get it up for you guys. So 4/8 would be the fourth jump. So the fourth jump is gonna be in the what? What can I say about the 4/8? Miguel's. Where is he at in this race? As in, is he equal to half, less than half, greater than a half? Which one is it?
Equal to half.
So what else can I say? Besides using fractions, what word in English, in the English language, can I use to say what I saw about Miguel? I think it starts with M. So let's see. Let's see if anybody can figure that one out. It starts with M.
Middle.
Middle. Or another way of saying it is halfway. So Miguel is halfway or in the middle of the race, right? So let's look at Harry. So how many intervals would I have for Harry now? How many intervals would I have for Harry? And how did you find that out again?
5.
How did you find that out?
The denominator.
All right, cool. Let's see. So we're counting from 0, we're jumping from 0 all the way to 1, and we would have gotten 5, right? Now that's where 4/5 is. Now, who is third in this race right now? Well, it's not necessarily a race, but since we're saying who is winning, let's use it as a race. So who is third in this race? Miguel. All right. Who is first in this race?
Harry.
Harry. And who is second?
Mary.
Mary. So you see that not just by actually looking at it, because if you look at it using the comparison, you would have realized that 3/4 and 4/5 is actually somewhat closer to the end. But how do you determine which one of them is in first or second? So we can use a number line to help us with that part of it, right? So that's how we use a number line to see who is actually, or who actually won so far, because this isn't the end of the race. Well, I don't know, anything can happen, right? Let's say it was a hurdle, they might have hit a hurdle and Mary would have won, but we're not using that scenario, we're using what we had or have so far, right? So let's continue with the last thing for today. And I'm asking for an additional 10 minutes. Can I get an additional 10 minutes, teachers, from your students? Yes or no, in the chat, please. Just a 10 minutes. Well, yeah. Can I get 10 minutes in the chat to do this last part? Okay, yes. Oh, you should. Okay, all caps, so I guess that's a good thing. Anyone else? Just confirming, because we said we would go up to 140, basically. It was an hour that was left back. All right. All right. What is good for me? All right, let's continue. So let's say we want to order fractions. You might get more fractions than this, but we're using 3 right now. We're ordering fractions. So we're going to use the same benchmarking that we used earlier by comparing the fractions, right? And also you can use the number line if you want to, right? So let's use our benchmarking, because that's the main idea that we're trying to bring off. So let's see. So we're gonna break down each of these fractions, each of these 3 fractions, then we're gonna state what is gonna happen or what should happen. All right, now the 7/10, the denominator is 10, but when we look at the numerator, it is greater than half of the denominator. So half of 10 is gonna give us 5, right? And once we get that 5, we look at the numerator. We're gonna look at the numerator. So the numerator is greater than half of the denominator. So 7 is greater than 5, right? So we got on that fraction already. So let's see what the other fractions are like. Now we have the 5/12. Now, what is half of 12? You can type in the chat or you can say it right now. What is half of 12? What is half? How much?
6.
Oh, all right, 6. Now looking at the numerator. Looking at the numerator. 5. Is 5 greater than 6 or is 5 less than 6? Which one is it? Is
than.
less than.
Than.
All right, good. So we have gone those two fractions already. We have one more fraction to look at. We have the 1/8. So we're going to do the same thing. Now, looking at 1/8, the denominator is 8. What is half of 8?
4.
4. And what, we look at the numerator, what do we see in the numerator? 1. So is 1 greater than 4? Or is 1 less than 4?
Less than 4.
Less than 4. All right. And remember now that the numerator is less than half of the denominator. Now, let's actually put some perspective on this. In other words, the smallest one out of these would be 1/8. And we're going to compare it to the second smallest thing. So the second smallest thing is 5/12. Remember that the 1/8 is less than a half, right? But if you compare it to the 5/12, you'd realize that half of 12 is 6. And even though that the 5 is less than 6, it is how much less than 6 is it? The 5 in the numerator for 5/12. How much less than 6 is 5? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? How much less is a 5 to 6? How much less is a 5 to the 6? Or how much more do you need from 5 to make it to 6?
1.
All right, 1. Now look at the 1/8. Half of 8 was 4. So we're looking at the 1 and then half, which was 4. So how many do we need to get to 4? How many, what do we need to add to 1 to make it 4? What do we do to 1 to make it
3.
3? We need 3 more. So this one, that means that 1/8 is further away from a half compared to 5/12. Everyone understand that part? Everyone gets that part? You can say yes or no.
Repeat, sir.
Oh, I'm asking if is everyone okay with that so far? That 1/8 is less than 5/12. Is everyone okay with that? All right. Now, if you notice, the 7/10 is the only one that is greater than a half. And this is why I never put the 7/10 when comparing the other stuff, the other fractions as yet. I'm doing with the two fractions that were deemed less than a half, which is the 1/8 and the 5/12. And then I recognize, or we recognize, that 1/8 is less than 5/12. Now, I'm going to take the bigger fraction, well, not the bigger fraction. I'm going to take the larger fraction, which is 5/12, and I'm going to compare it to the so-called largest fraction, or larger fraction in this scenario, since I'm describing using two things. Now, the 5/12, again, is closer to half, but the 7/10 is larger or greater than a half, right? So obviously in this scenario, I would say that 5/12 is less than 7/10. Now, by saying all of this, which fraction, arranging from least to greatest, which fraction would I write first? Would it be 7/10, 5/12, or 1/8? Which fraction would I write first? Which fraction is the smallest, the least? Is it 7/10, 5/12, or 1/8? Which one is it? Which fraction is the smallest out of the three?
1/8.
1/8. And which is the second largest? In other words, what is larger than the 1/8?
5/12.
5/12. And then what is larger than 5/12 in this question?
7/10.
7/10. So that's how I'm going to write it. But before I actually write it like that, I'm just gonna say that. Oh, I can't get it back. Oh, so this means now how we read this, you might be wondering, this seems like a lot and this is too much signs. So how we read this is saying that 1/8 is less than 5/12. Everyone is catching my drift. I don't want to say the drift, but yeah. Everyone is understanding what I'm saying? So we start reading from left to right. 1/8 is smaller or less than 5/12, but 5/12 is less than 7/10. Everyone understand that scenario? Well, everyone understood what I said? Reading from left to right. So again, 1/8 is smaller than 5/12, but that 5/12 is smaller than 7/10, right? So that is what that little scenario means. So as you said earlier, the first thing that I'm gonna write is 1/8, then 5/12, and then 7/10. So that's how we order the fraction from the least to the greatest. And if we had the greatest to the least, we would switch them, meaning we'll start with 7/10, then 5/12, then 1/8, right? So do I need to shift or go back? Everyone is on the same page now? Everyone is okay? Everyone is good so far? Anything? All right, good. All right. Now we have come to the end of today's session. All right. Now, before we leave, or before the teachers leave, there is an evaluation for this session. So the two presenters were Carl Harris and Giovanni Limi. So I'm gonna send that in the chat right now. You can click on the link and you can fill it out. So it's gonna come up right now. All right, and Miss Harris said it in the chat. Oh, is it two different links?
It's two different links, sir. So let me switch out.
No, check. You can check yours first, man. Because I think I sent a link from the old one. Let me just. All right, so that's it for today's